Hi, everyone. My name is Robert Abele. I'm a Los Angeles-based critic and journalist, and I'm here to talk to filmmaker Alessandra Celesia about her wonderful documentary, The Flats. Um, for our low vision and blind attendees, I have a beard, I have brown hair, white male with a dark colored shirt, and behind me are a lot of books in a bookcase.
Hi everyone, I am Alessandra Celesia and I am very Italian looking. I have big eyebrows. I'm sitting in a very bare office and I wear a green jumper with a little flower that I embroidered myself in red on the jumper.
Very nice, very nice. Hi, Alessandra. Congratulations on this movie. It's such an interesting film, and it's the kind of observed documentary with new elements that I really like. And I know with documentary filmmakers, sometimes there's interest in a topic that leads you to find a place in people, and sometimes you just find a place in people, and that sparks interest in a topic. How was it with the flats? I mean, I know you made a movie in Belfast before, but what was it that led you to this place, the new lodge?
Well, it's a very long story because I got married to a guy from Belfast in '97, and that was just before the peace agreement. And so that's how I arrived in the town. And actually, I always thought I would never make a film about the Troubles because it's behind us. And it's only years later, so I thought actually it passed the generation, the trauma is still there. And I did a film called The Bookseller of Belfast in 2012. And I was driving up to film at the bookseller's house every day, and I would see the flats. And it was just, I would say, something that I loved as a landscape that is very peculiar in Belfast because it's all very small houses, where these flats are very, very high. It's 12 floors. So I was very attracted. I adore Kieslowski, so I thought, oh, that looks like the Decalogue. And I definitely have to go and have a look. And then it was a big surprise because when I started to go there, it just, oh, this is my mom. Mom, I'm recording. Sorry.
Hi, Mom.
Sorry, this is typical Italian. And so once I got there, I realized, what a heavy story was in the flats. And then later on, I even realized that was where my family, husband's family was originally from on his dad's side.
Okay, so you go there, and then how did you come across, Joe and Jolene and Angie and these really interesting, wonderful people?
Well, I had a friend who worked there as a social worker, and he introduced me to a local historian, and he introduced me to a lot of people that were kind of professionals of the Troubles, people who had a story to tell. And I was not looking for that. So at some point I said, listen, just introduce me to some crazy characters or people who were like, really wounded, but like that they are funny as well, that as Joe, people who have a very, very big need to stay alive. And he said, I think I have someone for you. And so introduced me to Joe, and a friend of Joe, who unfortunately died before I was able to make the film. That made me understand as well as much how much that generation was going to go, and it was really the time to catch them. And Jolene, actually knew her from The Bookseller of Belfast because I filmed her in that film. She used to live in New Lodge, but I filmed her with the bookseller, so I didn't really connected the two places. And so she was like a very good guide for me into the place.
Yeah, that sounds kind of ideal. With someone like Joe, who is who's going through a lot, and but it also comes alive on screen. How do you convince them to participate in something like this, and what does it take to get them to become a participant in a movie like this?
I think probably the secret is to be really interested in their life, generally interested. And I think people feel that. And especially if you give a lot of time. And for me, it was a real pleasure, before we even started to imagine shooting, just to hang around with them and be there a long time. Also, we it took a long time to finance the film. So it basically, from the first time I met him until we finished the film, it was more than 7 years. So he
Wow.
had me around for a long time. And I think that was really important because I'm Italian, even if I'm married with someone from Belfast, I have a very strange position, you know. So I am an outsider, which is somehow good in such a complicated place where the war has made so many enemies. So I was like a neutral ground, you know, the mad Italian journalist, they used to call me. But also you need to understand so much. There is so many nuances that you have to get, and up to the moment where you think, oh, I can give justice to these people. You know, I can portray them and not betray them. And I think that's how you build the trust, you know, with time and just sitting in this living room, listen to his stories, write down when I come back at home, and just start to imagine, oh, how can we tell this? How can we tell that? Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because not only is it, as I said, just kind of wonderfully observed, it's also you have this thing that kind of reminded me of movies like the art of, is it the act of killing? The act of killing and Procession, where you can explore through reenactment what people are going through, and I'm just kind of wondering, where the origins of those scenes were.
Yeah, I mean, those are a miracle to me. Those things are really a miracle. Very early, I understood that I had a problem, that a lot of the things I wanted to tell, a lot of their stories, their traumas were in the past. And so I didn't want to stuck just with words, you know, like with someone telling someone else about those things. So I was like thinking, how can we do this? How can we do this? And it was really at some point when he started to tell me more about his uncle, who is 17 years old, who was shot when Joe was 9, and that was his big trauma. And I just realized how much his story was his story, but also the story of everyone else in the area. Everybody had someone who died, who passed away, and so it was a story of coffins. Loads of coffins. And I basically just bought a coffin. This coffin that is in the film. It was a cheap coffin, so nobody wanted it, and they gave us for very cheap. And I brought it there, and I said, Joe, do you want to give it a try? And it was actually not even the proper shooting. It was like we were doing some trials with the camera, and we decided, okay, let's try this scene. Let's try, because you can provoke certain things, but only if the characters find their own reason to be in that situation and to use that situation to cure or to say something. Only if they accept your game that you're proposing, then it's going to work. Otherwise, just contrived. You know, to my experience, it doesn't work. And actually, the guy who is in the coffin is my son, because nobody wanted to get into the coffin. And I think that made a first step in the total trust. And it was really homemade, you know, like, okay, Joe, he knew my son, he loved my son. And it was like, okay, he's going to be your uncle. And then all the neighbors came along, and I realized how much they have nearly like in Italian neorealism, they have a tradition of theater, you know, like non-professional theater, political theater. So I think they were totally ready in terms of their heritage to jump into that kind of language. I didn't bring it; it was there.
Yeah, I guess it also means this movie has a connection. What was that Italian documentary about that small town in Tuscany that puts on a theater show every year about the issues going on in town? I guess it reminds me of that.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, sorry, I don't remember the title.
I'm not gonna remember it either. But yeah. So well, then are you talking? I mean, Rita, who's also an interesting, seems like a lovely, empathetic a therapist. Did you talk to her about these reenactments and whether what they might bring up?
She played a big part in it. Rita, she's actually a befriender. A befriender is someone who is the first step before the therapist. She
Okay.
will work in associations that they deal with like suicide problems, and they're there to listen. And then if the issue is too big, they're gonna send the person to a therapist. And I contacted her because Joe was going through a weird phase, and I knew that he was seeing her, and I was like, oh, I need to talk to this woman and see, you know, is this film that we're going to make, is it going to be good for him or not? And then when I saw her, I was like totally in love with her, and I was like, in my wildest dreams, you know, like I said to her, do you think to film a session with you and Joe, do you think it's something possible? And she had to speak with her, you know, like superiors and ask if that was a good idea or not. But she felt it was going to be good for Joe, so we gave it a try. We said we'll do one, and then if it's not good for him or anything, we'll just throw it away. And it was just amazing because she said he was able. It was like if we gave him a frame in which he was able to express things that he would normally not express. And especially that generation of man in Northern Ireland, they're very, like, they don't talk. They're very tough, and they don't want to talk. They just make jokes. They don't go deep in their emotions. And my husband always laughs at me and says I was the only one who could really do it, because in Italy we have this sense of drama, and we like to go to the bottom of things, you know, and just like, and then why do you? So I think it was a really weird combination, but definitely Rita played a big part in making it happen.
It sounds like your husband might have been a part of it, like maybe a translator for you about Belfast personalities on this project.
Yes, and especially probably my father-in-law, because
Oh,
his family was originally from the area where they left, because it's a very rough area. So as soon as they could, they left, and then he raised the children in a nicer area. So I would say that my husband is a bit too bourgeois to have the codes of that area. But my father-in-law would know so much. So sometimes I would come back home and just say, Jack, sorry, it was this thing, this sign, I don't understand. And he would have the answers all the time. And he made it, for me, it was like, oh my God, I have to get this film right, because I'm the Italian daughter-in-law who comes and will leave a story about the place where you belong, you know. So I have to get it right. So he came to Copenhagen when the film was screened for the first time with my mother-in-law, and I got this approval, which was like biggest success for me.
well, it makes me wonder what did like Joe and Jolene and Rita and what did they think of the movie when they saw it?
Oh, they loved it. They saw it first, just the main characters, so 6 or 7, they were there, and we showed them the film before we completed the editing, just to make sure, you know, they were okay with everything. And it was an experience, you know. It was a very small cinema, just us, and I think what it is for a place that has been always treated, I would say, with disrespect. Very often the journalists go in just to find the dark side, the drugs, or what happened in the past, where we tried, and I think they helped me so much, to give some poetry to their life and to their sorrows. You know, how do you treat sorrows? But you treat them in a way that poetry comes in, and so they become a positive thing, or they become a strength, or you see how they can endure things, even with their black humor and jokes and etc. So I think they said to me, we recognize ourselves, you know, in this film, which
Wow.
was amazing. And we had the screening, the first official screening in Belfast was the opening of Docs Ireland, who is an important festival in Belfast. And we had the theater was 500 seats, and probably half of it was the people from New Lodge.
Oh, wow.
And Oh my God, that was a night, you know, and the reactions, and even to small details where they would laugh where nobody dares to laugh because they don't think they can laugh at certain dark things, you know, or they understand some sentences. For example, when Joe says to Jolene, you know, like, just go away, get out of here, because in general here in Belfast, people don't want you to become a better person than you were before.
Hmm.
And they started to clap.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
and it's normally a sentence that goes a little bit unnoticed, where they probably they felt it so much. So it was for me like a stamp, you know. Okay, you did it
It's
right.
the magic of people in a theater watching a movie together, a community watch. Well, you know, it's that kind of magic thing that happens. Speaking of kind of the creativity that people are using to kind of deal with their situation, you have Jolene, who's this incredible singer, and I noticed that you're a co-writer of some of the songs that she's singing in the movie. Can you talk about her and collaborating with her on those moments?
Absolutely. I mean, I adore Jolene as a singer, and I've been to her concerts. I'm her
Mm.
biggest fan. Jolene, she normally sings covers, so she never wrote her songs before. Although after the film, she started to write her own songs. And I said, Jolene, I think we could express so much, you know, like, because Irish people sing, can express so much. And let's write a national anthem of New Lodge, you know. And we were walking down the streets and seeing this pavement, all these little weeds growing to concrete. And we were like, oh, those weeds are nasty ones. You know, you cannot destroy them that easily. And they're so resilient as people in New Lodge. And so the song says that's the way we are. And so we really sat down and we were just trying to, you know, tell in words what it is to be from New Lodge. And I was just there to facilitate or to help, and words would come out from her. And then I have a friend who's a composer, and we went down and they just started to invent the music, and then the song was made, you know. And then from there, it's those things again that you try. And we sang the song once, and then in the courtyard, you know, in that scene with the women. And
Yeah.
then we said, oh, let's try in a pub. And then we went a little bit crazier, and we thought, why not give it like let it fly, you know. And so we decided to have a choir and to have all the people from New Lodge to sing it with Jolene. So I think I told you before, I come from theater, and for me to transform reality is a way to pay respect to reality, because the reality we see is nicer than sometimes the reality that a camera can capture when it goes in like a journalistic you know, way of looking at things, where we can transform it and we can give it a shape that helps the moment to become memorable, you know, for maybe hopefully the
Yeah.
next generation.
Yeah, and it's also a nice bookend. You have reenactments of previous traumas, but then you have this. It's not a reenactment, but it's a vision of the future with the singing and the women and stuff like that. It's a nice thing. I just want to know, as I feel like you're probably an honorary Belfastian right now, Alessandra. So can you talk about what did making this movie tell you about the scars of political violence and the possibility of uniting Ireland?
Well, I think, like, I never realized how much, you know, it goes to the next generation and the next generation. So the violence doesn't stop in the moment where it's made. You know, it goes to the kids and the kids of the kids. And it's pretty incredible to see, like in North Belfast where we shot, there is a very high rate of suicide, and especially in between young male. So that tells a lot. Or the violence for women, as we see in the film, you know, for Jolene or Angie. It's like a consequence, you know, like a
Mhm.
parallel consequence of something else. Now, yes, things are changing. I think the winning of Sinn Féin, who is the party, you know, who like is working for a United Ireland. They won the elections the last time, and the Catholics became a majority in Northern Ireland. So I think little by little things are changing, but the consequences of like a empire who divided two populations, it's that these two populations are not the same anymore. I would say that people from Northern Ireland are very different than people from Ireland. So it's not like unifying the same country, it's unified two countries now.
Yeah.
So it's a process that's going to take time. But as everything, I suppose the key question is money and jobs. Because when you have money and when you have a job and you can look for a better life, you start to see things differently and start to see let things from the past, to slip from your shoulder, and you're like, okay, I can move forward. But in those pockets of poverty that still exist in Belfast, to hang on to the past and a glorious somehow, like even if it seems crazy, but a glorious past, it's difficult because that's what you're left with, like a sense of identity. And unfortunately, in Belfast, as in many other places, identity just divides. So I would say for the center, like the center and some other areas in Belfast, the thing is gone. And yes, maybe we're gently moving towards a United Ireland. In other places in Belfast, still present. And the Brexit showed it really well. Because when Brexit arrived, it was like, where are we going to put the border?
Right.
Like you cannot put it where it was because it's going to be a revolution. And then they put it on the sea, but then that divides the loyalists from their queen, and now the king from mainland. So that was a real, and it shows you how much a conflict in the past can, like, all of a sudden, boom, a little problem in the present, years and years after, and just come back alive again.
Well, certainly all those things are so very visible and present in this movie. This idea that idealism and trauma can coexist in people. It's still and it's an incredible movie about that, Alessandra. And I thank you very much for talking to us about it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I hope see people in America can see it.
Yes, I hope so too. I want everybody here in America to see this. Thank you, and thank you all for being here for this.